The first therapy I want to talk about is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is when you get in you get in a big round tube. It tends to be about 30 to, let's say, 40 inches wide, and then it's about, let's call it 80 inches long. So it's a little bit longer than most people's body. It's maybe 7 foot long or so. And you get in this tube, and what it does is it's hyperbaric. So you're getting a lot of oxygen. You have something, typically wear something over your face where you're getting oxygen, and then there's an increase in pressure. So those are the two things. You're getting a lot of oxygen, and then you're in this tube that's increasing pressure. And so what happens is your body, that pressure is driving oxygen deeper into your body. So it's driving oxygen into your blood. It's driving oxygen into your cerebral spinal fluid. It's driving oxygen into your cells and into your organs. And everything in your body, for the most part, functions more optimally when it's getting more oxygen. In fact, a lot of medical conditions today are due to lack of oxygen. Think, of course, about there's a lot of issues regarding respiratory issues or lung issues, we know, but also even cancer has been linked to a lack of oxygen at a cellular level. If you are not healing properly, you have wounds or infections or something that's not healing like it should, that tends to be because there's not enough oxygen. In fact, when you look at hyperbaric oxygen therapy and what it's commonly used for, it's most commonly used to treat infections. In fact, there was a recent study, this was just in 2023, a review found that hyperbaric oxygen therapy can result in rapid healing of various wounds and burns. It also has the potential beneficial effects of fighting infections because it acts as a natural antibiotic. So think about that. Oxygen acts as a natural antibiotic. By the way, not just an antibiotic, it's a natural antiviral, anti-parasite, antifungal. And so a lot of these things, even cancer cells, in fact, there are many physicians who believe that cancer really acts in a very similar way to a fungus or a virus within your body. And so when you get more oxygen in the body, it can kill off a lot of these pathogens that you might be exposed to. And I want to share how I experienced this personally. So many of you know that in 2022, I went and just got a routine stem cell injection, which I'm going to do a future episode on that. Now, I had stem cell done once before. Both times it had helped tremendously. I noticed, okay, my back pain's like 90% gone. I just had a little bit of an ache left. And so I thought, I'm going to get this done one more time. Got an injection. Somehow, bacteria got on the needle, my disc got infected, and my bone got infected. So I actually had infection in my bone. So I started doing an extreme amount of research to look for how can I naturally heal from an infection that's in my spine, in my disc, in my bone. And so as I did all the research, some of the most compelling studies were around hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because if I had this bacterial infection in my disc, if I get in a hyperbaric chamber, this oxygen is pressed deep into my bones and my blood and into my disc in this area where I had infection. In fact, one study found that people with a spinal infection were able to decrease antibiotic time. So if somebody gets a spinal infection or infection in certain areas of the body, they recommend taking antibiotics via IV to get it into the area. Doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy, in the one study I read, cut down on antibiotic time by about 30%. Sometimes even more. And so that's what I did when I was in that situation with an infection. I said, I don't want to have all of the side effects of long-term antibiotic use. And so I was able to cut my time of what I would need to be on there. And by the way, I'm not recommending if you have an infection to do exactly what I did, this medical disclaimer here. But what I did is I was able to cut the time in half because of all of the therapies I did with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, some of the IVs I'll talk about later, like ozone and silver and some others. But all that being said, hyperbaric oxygen therapy can act as a natural antibiotic. And typically there are two types of hyperbaric oxygen therapy units. You have soft shell units, which you can have at home. And so you could buy one. In fact, I have one in my house, and it can typically get up to about 1.3 to 1.5 ATA. What that means is how much pressure and how deep it's driving oxygen into your body. And so you can get a soft shell. Now, if somebody has a a very, very serious condition, like a spinal infection, or you've had serious burns all over your body, now, it's still beneficial to get in a home unit, but sometimes you want a more powerful unit, and that's called a hard shell, and it can get up to 2.5 ATA. Now, I want to mention 1.3 ATA and 2.5, it might sound like 2.5 is twice as powerful as 1.3. It's actually not the way those numbers work. It's actually probably 10 times more powerful. So if you can get in a hard chamber, it might be anywhere from 5 to 10 times stronger than a soft shell hyperbaric oxygen therapy tank or unit that you're getting in. But overall, again, it is incredibly powerful. Some of the conditions it's best for, again, I want to mention some of these. One, it's very beneficial for infections. Okay, no matter what type of infection you have, but especially a bacterial infection, Lyme disease, if you have a viral infection like Epstein-Barr, CMV, even possibly even just many other types of viral infections. So if you have any type of infection, it could possibly benefit you in a great way. The other thing is if you ever get a major burn or gangrene. I have a very close friend of mine. He's a medical doctor who works at, he's a researcher at the University of California. And he was doing some lab research, spilled chemicals all over his hand. And he was going to possibly lose 2 of his fingers because of the damage was so bad from the chemical burns. He went in and got in a hyperbaric oxygen therapy tank every day for 30 days, and he was able to keep his fingers. And so you can see there, it is incredibly powerful. If it wasn't for that, he said it 100%, according to him, and he knows this. He's a physician that studies this. He studies these chemicals. He would have lost his fingers. And so you can see it's extremely powerful. Now, I want to mention too, when I did run my full-time clinic, and anytime I've worked over the past many years with children who are on the autistic spectrum, I've had many of them do oxygen therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And what it does is it helps bring oxygen to the brain, which can help with development. It can also help reduce brain inflammation. In fact, if you've ever been in a car accident or if anybody's ever had a concussion, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, getting more oxygen to the brain can help. If anybody has had any sort of injury where they've been cut off from oxygen for a period of time or had a stroke, this is probably the single best therapy by far for many conditions, including if anyone or you have a family member that's had a stroke. Also good for things like Alzheimer's, dementia. More than any other therapy you can imagine, it helps get oxygen to the brain. It gets oxygen to the blood and to your organs. And so hyperbaric oxygen therapy is an incredible therapy. And there are so many people as well who get in it to slow the aging process. Remember what oxidation is. If you get if I take a bite of an apple and all of a sudden it starts to decay and eat away, there's an oxidation happening. This may even help with that to a degree. But all that being said, it's important to recognize this is something that you could do at home. You can go to clinics and get it done. In fact, LeBron James, I mentioned, listen to this. LeBron James spends around, he's quoted saying this, he spends around $1.5 million a year taking care of his body. And he does a combination of hyperbaric chamber, cryotherapy, and compression boots